الله شيخ سمير.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نؤمن به ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمد عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم. Alhamdulillah, I'm here as a guest, and the first thing I want to do is thank this community for having me here, especially when we're in the presence of such great imams and scholars as Sheikh Rida. And I am not from here, even though my wife is from here, and this is actually the masjid where we got married. But I grew up in a much smaller Muslim community in Knoxville, Tennessee. And you all have a lot to be thankful for. This masjid, this imam, the people who are helping to contribute and manage this place is something you should constantly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. Constantly say Alhamdulillah for this blessing. Because it's a huge blessing to have, especially when many Muslims are in much smaller communities that don't provide as many services and programs as this masjid does. So alhamdulillah that you all are in a very beautiful community and a beautiful masjid here. Alhamdulillah. And I wanted to focus my khutbah on the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one thing, if you open up the Quran, and hopefully inshallah we will all get a chance to do that today. If you turn the pages of the Quran, it is very difficult to turn 2 or even 3 pages without seeing a kind of story. Stories fill the Quran. In fact, I recently read an article that the CEO of Amazon told his higher management that when we come to meetings from now on, I don't want you to use PowerPoint slides or show me long reports, but I want you to convey what you want to tell me in the form of a story, Because since the days when human beings first learned how to light a fire and sit around a fire together, stories are the main currency of communication with human beings. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam is mentioned over 100 times in the Quran. He is the most mentioned by name of all the prophets in the Quran. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned almost 100 times. Even Maryam alayhi salam is mentioned more in the Quran. She's mentioned more in the first person, the second person, the third person, or referred to in the Quran more than in the New Testament of the Bible itself. So stories fill the Quran. And we know in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Tell them, O Prophet, tell them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell them, if you truly love God, if you truly love Allah, then follow me, and Allah will love you, and He will forgive you of your sins. So Allah ties Him loving us with following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can't follow someone that you don't know. You can't follow someone that you don't know. And we teach our children the story of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We learn that. We love his story. One of the mistakes we make often is our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived 63 years. And we tend to focus on what happened after the first revelation, which is the last 23 years, right? But we don't tend to focus on the first 40 years of his life that much. It's something when we read the Sirah books, we tend to skim over, sometimes even skip about 2/3 of the Prophet's life story, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 2/3. And that early part of his life is very important. It's where the seeds were planted for the revelation to flourish when the first revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ. We know that he was orphaned at a young age. We know that he began at a young age looking after people's animals as a shepherd. Sometimes, in fact, that's the first way as a kid where the Prophet ﷺ used to make money, is by watching over people's animals while they were away. He would do that. We know that later in life, along with his, joining his uncle, he became a merchant. He started to learn trade and business. This was how the Prophet ﷺ started to learn an occupation at a young age. And his reputation grew in Mecca, because there's even a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that the honest businessman, the honest tajir, is resurrected with the martyrs on the Day of Judgment, because it's so easy to cheat people when you're dealing with money and buying and selling. And the Prophet ﷺ was not like that at all. His reputation grew as Al-Amaan, the reliable. People trusted him 100%. 100%. In fact, our mother Khadija radiallahu anha she could not travel long distances as a woman in that time. She would give him merchandise, and he would then go sell it to retailers, sometimes at a very long distance. Many of the people that she had hired before the Prophet ﷺ used to, because she wasn't with them, they used to pocket a lot of that money. She knew if people were lying to her and saying that they made this much money, when in fact they actually made much more, but they probably took some profits, extra profit for themselves. So he was not like that, and that's one of the reasons she was so impressed with the Prophet ﷺ, was his character, was his reliability. In fact, we know when the Prophet ﷺ first received the revelation and he was worried and anxious and stressed, she comforted him. He said, I'm worried that something bad has come to me. Something maybe has possessed me. When he came back from the mountain after the first revelation, and she comforted him by saying what? By saying, Kalla. لا يخزيك الله أبدا إنك لتصل الرحم وتحمل الكل وتكرم الضيف وتعين على نوائب الحق. That Allah would not abandon you because of your good character, because you take care of the guests, because you look for people that have fallen through the cracks, and you help people in need, because you are someone who maintains family ties. Allah will not abandon you, and I'm positive Allah loves you for the same reasons that I love you. So he was known in Mecca even before the first revelation. His reputation preceded the revelation. And it reminds me of one of my favorite stories before the revelation, when the Kaaba in Mecca was severely impacted by a flood and a fire. The Kaaba had almost been destroyed because of a flood and a fire in Mecca pre-revelation. And many of us know this story, but there's an important lesson from this story to keep in mind. And the Kaaba was in bad shape in that time, severely harmed. And there was a Christian ruler from the Byzantines or the Romans who had a project that he wanted to build a church, a very fancy church, in the area what we know of as Yemen today. He had a ship, he had carpenters, he had beautiful marble, beautiful wood, and he sent that all on a ship, and it was headed towards Yemen, but the ship encountered a storm, and it was shipwrecked off the coast near where we have Jeddah today in Saudi Arabia. The ship wrecked, the carpenters survived, but all of this marble and wood also survived. And the chiefs of Mecca, the leaders of Mecca, the elders of Mecca all said, this is a sign from Allah that now is the time that we should take on the construction project of rebuilding the Kaaba. Because we have all this material now, and they even hired the carpenters so that they could make wages and eventually get back home. so that they could help them with this project. And all of the different groups within Mecca, all the different clans and tribes, divided into 4 groups. And they decided each of these 4 groups is going to tackle one wall of the Kaaba and constructing it from its foundation and bringing it back up to the top in this construction project. Now, they had to tear it down slightly in order to rebuild the Kaaba. And what had happened just a couple of decades before this was the story of Ashab al-Fil, the story of the elephant. So everyone was afraid to be the first one to take a hammer and hit the Kaaba. Like, imagine living like 30 years, 40 years after that miracle of an army punished for wanting to destroy the Kaaba, and who is going to take the first hammer to hit the Kaaba so they can rebuild it? And it was a man named Walid. He said, I'm not afraid, Allah knows our intentions. And so they all watch him as he hits the Kaaba with a hammer, and then they want to start the work, but he hits the Kaaba, and they all decide to wait until the next day. They say, we're just going to wait till you wake up in the morning and make sure you don't get struck by lightning, or maybe you encounter a big illness or a plague, or you die by some weird accident. So they actually waited until the next morning to see if Walid survives after hitting the Kaaba. But he survived. And alhamdulillah, they started rebuilding the Kaaba until it came to the time where they had to put the sacred black stone in its proper place, to lift the stone and put it in its place. And anyone here that has watched movies about the mafia, and don't raise your hand if you've seen things like The Godfather or whatnot, but in Arabia at that time, among Quraysh, the clans were like the mafia. If you hurt someone in my family or in my clan, we are going to take revenge. Whether we're in the right or we're in the wrong, we will fight you if you attack someone from my clan. It was very tribal. They didn't have developed court systems like the Persians and the Romans. And every few years, the clans of Mecca would have civil war. This was known. They had big fights, big battles between the clans. So they all started to argue now, which of the clans is going to have the sharaf, the honor of taking the black stone and putting it in its proper place? Which clan? And they broke out into a huge argument until they were about to pick up weapons and go to war against one another. Some of them had pledged, if we don't be the clan, if we are not the clan to lift the black stone, we will fight to the death. And they were about to fight to the death until a man, they say, was maybe in his 90s, one of the elderly of the elders. He actually says, hold on a second, hold on. Don't you see how Allah has put barakah in this project from the very beginning? He has given it taysir, and He's given it facilitation, and He's helped. I have an idea. Why don't we wait to see who the first man is to walk in to the haram, and that person will decide which clan will put the black stone in its proper place. Can we all agree to that? Because we know Allah has put barakah in this, and Allah will choose wisely for us. And they agreed to this surprisingly, even though a few minutes before they were about to fight. They were about to go to war. And I always imagine to myself, I always wonder what it was like in those few minutes as they're waiting. People who were about to kill one another, but they agreed. Were their hands sweating and their hearts racing? Were they afraid? Were they nervous? They must have been clenched teeth. They must have been so nervous about what was going to happen. But who walks in the door except the 35-year-old Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who walks in except the 35-year-old Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? 5 years before the first revelation, and immediately all all of the worries and the sweat and the clenched arms and the clenched teeth and the people holding onto their swords, they release. They smile. They're relieved. And they say, we are content with Al-Amaan. We're happy with this. Because they knew, as Khadija radiallahu anha said, that he was a fair broker. He was fair. He was honest. And even though most of them were not from Bani Hashim or Bani Muttalib, they knew he would still be fair with all the tribes. And we know of the solution that he came up with, where they all lifted the stone together, holding a blanket, and he solved that problem. But the point is that Allah preserved this story for us for a reason, to show us that even up until 5 years before the revelation, his character preceded him. His reputation preceded him. He had a reputation of goodness before revelation. He was Al-Amaan for 40 years before he was An-Nabi in Mecca. And that's something we have to reflect on. So the question we have to pose to ourselves today as Muslims, over 1400 years later, is what do people think of us when we walk in the room? As Muslims, when we walk into a gathering where nobody knows us, or they may know us a little bit, or they've heard of Muslims, but are they afraid? Do they trust us with their hearts? Do they know our character as Muslims, as messengers of the Messenger ﷺ, as ambassadors of the Prophet ﷺ? And all the studies, all the polls here in America show that no, people are not comforted when they see Muslims. People are not at ease when they see Muslims in America. There was a recent Pew Research study done, a very respectable, well-known study done of Americans by the Pew Research Center that asked Americans, when you think of all the different religious groups in America, Jews, Catholics, Buddhists, Hindus, even people who are atheists, how do you feel on a scale of 0 to 100? How warmly do you feel about this group? 100 being the best, and 0 being the worst. And for the second time in a row since they've conducted this study, they showed that Jews and Catholics scored highest. And below them were Buddhists, Mormons, below them were evangelicals, below them were atheists, and at the very bottom of this list was Muslims. Again, the only group that scored actually below 50% for the second time in a row was Muslims. So we have to ask ourselves as Muslims, if we were truly Muhammadan, if we inculcated and embodied the character of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, would people view us as the more coldly than any other group, with such alienation, with such fear and discomfort? And the answer is no. No one can be truly an ambassador of Rahmatan lil Alameen and be viewed as 48% on that scale. And the question we have to ask is, how do our families also feel when we enter the room? How do our relatives feel? How do our co-workers feel? How do our spouses feel when we enter the room? Are they at ease? Do they feel like mercy has come in, or punishment has come in, or fear or violence has come in? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So that Pew Research study is definitely depressing, and we have a lot of work to do as a community. to truly learn about and follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The good news, because I don't want to end that portion of the khutbah on a bad note, the good news is that if you go back about 90 years ago, 80, 90 years ago in America, I mentioned that today the Jews and Catholics score the highest in terms of who Americans feel the most comfortable with. Jews and Catholics, they were in the 70s in that poll. Now, 1939, 1920, 1910, 100 years ago, there was no group that was more despised than Jews and Catholics in America. In fact, in 1939, during the World War, they asked Americans, can we as Americans accept, are you okay with accepting 40,000 Jewish children, teenagers, who were escaping Nazi Germany onto American shores? Are you okay as Americans to accept Jewish refugee children? 40,000 of them. 80% of Americans in 1939 said, no, we don't want Jewish children on American shores. And now look how the tables have turned. So there is hope, and we have to end that part on a good note, that there is hope as Muslims grow, as we learn about and follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We as a community, inshallah, will plant beautiful seeds in this country, inshallah. And people will see the light of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the light of his message. Now, our community in America is mostly immigrant, majority immigrant. My own parents are immigrants from Egypt, both of them, both parents. I know sometimes people think I'm half white or something. No, I'm all Egyptian. And both of them came from Egypt, and unfortunately, many children in America today, like myself, we went to Sunday school. I went to Sunday school in Tennessee along with my friend Mustafa Al-Sharif. Many of you know him, he's here today. We went to Sunday school, and the way that we learned about the Prophet ﷺ in Sunday school, unfortunately, it was a very dry way. If any of you have had to hire people, you've read people's resumes, their CV. Many children today learn about the Prophet ﷺ as if they are reading a resume. That he did this in this year. Then he did this in this year. Then he did this in this year. It's like a list of facts and dates. And that's it. But anyone who has read resumes or written a resume, they know you will never fall in love with a person by reading a resume. Never. So I grew up, unfortunately, without a strong love for the Prophet ﷺ. And many Muslim kids in America, unfortunately, they face this crisis. And we struggle with this with our own children. It's a crime for us to raise children without them deeply knowing, and deeply loving the Prophet ﷺ. If you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, after the first revelation, for 10 years in Mecca, there were not many rules. We had 10 years Mecca, 13 years Medina. The first 10 years, there were not many rules of fasting. Fasting in Ramadan came in Medina. The obligation or the requirement of going to Hajj came in Medina. Most of the rules, even forbidding completely the drinking of alcohol, came in Medina. Most of the rules came in Medina. We have reversed things with our children. Because those first 10 years in Mecca, the Muslims were falling in love with Allah and with the Messenger of Allah. They were falling in love with the Prophet. The revelation focused on Iman and Tazkiyah, purification of their hearts. Who Allah is, who we should be as people, as characters, and even the Prophet. This mic is messing up, I think. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the heaviest thing on the scales on the Day of Judgment is good character. So loving the Prophet ﷺ should precede law. Sometimes we put, in Sunday school again, it was focused so much that this is halal, this is haram. This is halal, this is haram. This is halal, this is haram. And that's how many kids are raised before they even have fallen in love with Allah and His Messenger. And mostly it's 99% haram that they're told, and very little halal. Now, we have to reverse that and put love before law. The law is important. It's necessary, it's critical, it's important. But if people are following rules without being fueled by that love, then people will leave Islam. And today, another horrible study has shown that 23% of young people in America who grew up Muslim today no longer consider themselves Muslim. 23% of people who say they grew up Muslim say we no longer identify with this religion. What's the cause of that? What's the cause of that? And we know that love is tied to our success in the next life, love of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, I come from Tennessee, and there's a beautiful story, a hadith of a Bedouin man, a man from the Bedouins of Arabia who came to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Bedouins were known to be very direct, very blunt. And because I'm from Tennessee, I can make an analogy and say the Bedouins of Arabia were like the Arabian rednecks. They came in and they said whatever was on their mind. They had no filters. And this man came directly to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Mata sa'a? When is the final hour? When is the day of judgment? When is it coming? The Prophet ﷺ responded, what have you prepared for it? And the man, very honest, very blunt, he said, I haven't done much extra prayer. I haven't done much extra fasting. But I'll tell you one thing, that I love Allah and I love the Messenger of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ responded to him in a way that should give us all hope. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, a person will be with the one that he or she loves. On the day of judgment, a person will be with the one they love. Anas, one of the greatest companions of the Prophet ﷺ, said, that hadith gave us more hope than anything the Prophet ﷺ ever said. That one hadith. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, how can our children love someone that they don't know? How can they love someone that they don't know? So I'm going to conclude. I have 3-4 minutes left. I want to close this by encouraging us all, inshallah. Some of you may be getting the emails from the Masjid. There is a beautiful program coming to this Masjid next weekend that's strictly focused on knowing who the Prophet ﷺ is, on the character of the Prophet ﷺ. There are 4 teachers coming, 4 speakers that are coming here. One that's very well known, Sheikh Ubaidullah Evans, one of the first African American graduates from Al-Azhar in Egypt, studied many years in Egypt. And he's one of the few teachers that's coming, and we have flyers that you'll see as you're leaving the Masjid. We want to encourage you to register as a family for this program. This is a program that my organization, Celebrate Mercy, brings to cities all over America. We brought it to Princeton, New Jersey in January, and 200 people came from about 11 or 12 states. There's already more than 60 people that have registered for the program that's coming here next Saturday, in 8 days from today. It starts on a Saturday night, and then it continues until Sunday, until about Asr time, about 5 p.m. And it's a really powerful program, and it's only discussing 10 ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a program that I've seen impact young people. If you have young people above the age of 10 and teenagers, college students, they love this program. Adults love this program. So we have great teachers coming, including Sheikha Aisha Prime, a female scholar that studied in Yemen, and a great teacher. She's going to be teaching as well. So we want to encourage everyone. Today is actually the last chance you have. After Jumu'ah prayer to get the early bird discount for this class. And there are scholarships available too. We make it a policy that no one is refused to enter our programs if they can't afford the programs. So if anyone needs a scholarship or they want to help provide a scholarship, then talk to Brother Subhan and the others who are helping him outside, inshallah. And we want to encourage everyone to do that. You know, I ask children, I'll close with this. I always ask children when I give talks, can you describe for me how tall Steph Curry is, the basketball player? And usually during the khutbah, the children will respond. They'll say, mashallah, I see Khalid's son here, he didn't respond. So he's been trained well. Don't respond. So the kids will be so excited to say, Steph Curry, 6'3". And they can tell me his shoe size and what year the basketball player Steph Curry was drafted into the NBA and what team he plays for and how old he is, his daughter's name. Then we ask children, tell me the names of the children of the Prophet ﷺ. Tell me the names of the mothers of the believers, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. Describe for me how he talked and how he walked. And tell me why was he called Rahmatan lil Alameen. Describe him to me. And children cannot raise their hands. So how can we meet the Prophet ﷺ if our children don't know him? That is a crime. So I want to encourage everyone, the average American lives to be 78 years old. That means, on average, we will all have 4,000 weekends in our life. I want to encourage everyone to give one of those 4,000 weekends as a gift to the Prophet ﷺ for what he has given us. And bring your families, register your families, see the tables outside, and we encourage you to do that, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم لا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا. اللهم ارحم المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. يا أرحم الراحمين, we ask you to protect the iman of our community, to protect our iman, to make the last thing we say in this life, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We ask you to protect the iman of our children and our grandchildren. And your Prophet ﷺ said that near the end of time, holding on to Islam will be like holding on to a hot piece of charcoal. So we ask you, Ya Allah, to give us and our children and our grandchildren fireproof gloves, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, and to protect their iman, and to spread and to help us be Muhammadan parents, help us be Muhammadan neighbors, help us be Muhammadan co-workers. Help us be Muhammadan parents to our children. Help us to be Muhammadan neighbors to all of the people around us. And through us learning about and following the example of the Prophet ﷺ, we ask you to show them the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ through our example, Ya Allah. Make the seerah a proof for us and not against us, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وأقم الصلاة.
تكبير. جزا الله خيرا أخينا الأخ الشيخ طارق المسيري على هذه الخطبة، وإن شاء الله
There's an Uber driver that returned to return someone's key that they lost in the Uber car.
إن شاء الله نحرص جميعا على حضور هذه المجالس في سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وعندنا دعاء بالشفاء واجب علينا لأخينا الآن الأخ أشرف عامر، تجرى له عملية جراحية الآن الأخ أشرف عامر شقيق الدكتور منير عامر، ودعاء أيضا بالشفاء لوالدة أخينا خالد مدني، ودعاء بالشفاء لشقيقة أخينا الحبيب الحاج يوسف أبو وجدي. نسأل الله والحبيبنا في الله تعالى طبعا دائما نذكره، حبيبنا في الله تعالى الحاج محمد مسعد، أدعو لهم جميعا لأن الله تعالى يعليهم إلى العافية، وأن يمسى عنهم باليمين الشافية الكافية. اللهم داوهم بدوائه واشفهم اللهم بشفائه وعافهم اللهم من ابتلائك يا أرحم الراحمين. وأرجو أن لا نحرم أنفسنا من بركة التبرع للمسجد وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. واكتب لنا في هذه الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة إنا هدنا إليك قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء فسأكتبها للذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل يا أيها الناس إني رسول الله إليكم جميعا الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض لا إله إلا هو يحيي ويميت فآمنوا بالله ورسوله النبي الأمي الذي يؤمن بالله وكلماته واتبعوه لعلكم تعملون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
So just a reminder for those who came late, as you exit, there'll be a table where you'll see flyers and you'll be able to register for the program coming here in 8 days. The program is called Content of Character. We have 4 special guests coming in from out of town. It's suitable for kids, it's suitable for adults. It's a very beautiful program, basic program on 10 ahadith about character, akhlaq of the Prophet ﷺ. So we urge you to register if you haven't already. Today is the last day where you can get the lowest price, the early bird discount, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.